So welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And today we have a very special guest, an old friend of mine, Steve Dunlop. So Steve is he's an engineer turned audio visionary who quit a senior strategy post at Global Radio back in 2015, I think it was, to launch A Million Ads, which is a platform that pioneered real-time, data-driven personalization in digital audio advertising. So with AMA's technology now serving, billions of hyper-targeted impressions across Spotify, Pandora, iHeart, that sort of thing, Steve's really sat at this fascinating intersection between sound, storytelling, creativity, AI, and all those things around that area. So in this episode, we're going to explore a little on his views more broadly on AI, hopefully how he sees AI and machine learning blending with human creativity, and no doubt we'll touch on a few kind of tools, tips, tricks he's learned on along the way to really make yourself more effective as an executive by using these types of tools as well. So welcome, Steve. So good to see you. I'm really, really excited to be chatting to you about this. You're one of the smartest guys I know. No.
All with the flattery, Rupert. Thank you very much. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me along.
No big task at all. So look, I always kind of dive in with the pretty the big picture questions, really, and I think it's really interesting because you are actually someone who has been steeped in AI for quite a long time. However you define AI, machine learning, algorithmic stuff, or whatever. And so I'd love to kind of understand if you think back to where it all started and where you thought about how machines could help you to be more effective. Like what have you observed about the last 10, 15 years and how AI has evolved and what's exciting about it for you?
Sure. Well, we first integrated a machine learning technique into our AMA product in 2018. Obviously, AI or machine learning, as it was, has been around for years and years. I actually studied it in engineering in 1997, so I didn't want to age myself too much by giving that away immediately. But the first version of the A Million Ads tool was very kind of straightforward, almost like drag and drop, one audio clip for one data item that would then get served out and delivered onto, as you eloquently said in the intro, to all the different audio music streaming platforms or internet radio platforms or podcasting platforms. And then, by 2018, we'd built a tool for creatives and producers to help them design these data-driven ads and make their workflow and the process of getting these ads onto the streaming platforms more efficient. And it appeared to us, very early on, that using AI techniques within the software would actually help our users do the job more effectively and more efficiently. And if you think of the type of tool that we were building at AMA, we would have long lists of things. So one of our clients might be a quick service retail branch outlet like a Dunkin' Donuts or a McDonald's, you might imagine.
Right.
And they have thousands of potential locations. And our tool let the advertiser talk about the closest location to the listener right there and then. So you might have a couple of variables about what type of menu items are available, if it was the morning, the afternoon, or the evening. If it was raining, you might talk about one different menu item, like a hot cup of coffee, versus if it's dead sunny, you might talk about a McFlurry or something along those lines. And then you'd point the listener to their closest McDonald's. So if you've got tens of thousands of McDonald's times by, let's say, 10 different menu items times by 3 times of the day, you've got hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of possible permutations of the ad there. And handling that number of items is kind of the secret sauce of our tool, and then serving the right one at the right time to the right user in the right moment was really the trick. And AI can help a lot in handling big data sets like that, and also making the job of creativity not having to sit there and write each one of those individually. Maybe you write a template, you write a kind of example version of how you want that ad to sound and feel, and then in the early days, back in 2018, AI would kind of fill in the gaps, and it would extrapolate or extend that list from the first 5 that you'd give it to the 150,000 or the 500,000 or really unlimited versions beyond that. So taking away a lot of the kind of manual labor and also low value labor of just iterating through all of those different versions. So that was in 2018, and at the time we used an Amazon data set. to do that. There was a lot about locations, or how could we spot a city name? How could we spot a weather type like rain or sun or cloud, and then extrapolate from that. Say, oh, this bit of the script that the audio advert is based on is talking about weather. So what other weather alternatives could we do and suggest, and extrapolate the tool there? So that was all kind of built into the tool, and over time extended that more. And by the time I actually left AMA at the end of last year, and the engineering team as I was leaving were extending that even further to include some of the generative AI that's now widely available to actually help right even further up the stream of the workflow to generate those ideas in the first place. So you might just type in QSR across the US, 10,000 restaurants, go, and it would, and now actually we have a tool that can spit out ideas, and then you can drill down into those ideas and get more detail as you go. So yeah, we've had it like from an engineering point of view built into our software for a long time, but really with a view at that point to making our tool easier to use and faster to use.
Yeah, but if we go back to the beginning, the founding of AMA, like, at the time, the whole concept of getting, engineering to deliver this level of personalization and specification was just such an unknown thing, and particularly in something like audio. Like, how did you come up with this?
It was actually developed already in text-based advertising. So AdWords or search results would have, to an extent, personalized copy, but often that would just be text, maybe a different image, and it would always be driven by just fast permutation of all of the different combinations, serving as many of them as possible, and then optimizing the ones that got the most clicks. So actually quite rudimentary ways of doing dynamic optimization of creative. When I approached this for audio, I was the first person to kind of see that happening over here in the display world. There were some very early video advertising products out there as well. And my background was actually as a radio producer. I'd spent 3 years in a soundproof glass box making adverts and jingles for a rock music radio station in the northwest of England. And so I had this kind of first-hand knowledge of the creative workflow and knew how that distributed itself. So how it went from someone in like one of the very high-end digital audio workshop tools like Pro Tools, going all the way through from there to actually being heard by a listener through, as it was at the time, FM or DAB, and then as streaming grew through IP-delivered streaming. And so I saw this opportunity to take some of those techniques from digital display advertising and put them into audio. The challenge is that in audio, particularly when we started, that you had to have a human voice actor. So if you were changing the different versions, you'd want the voiceover artist to read out all of the different versions. So actually the real kind of thing that cracked it early on was splitting up the script, the read that the voice actor would read, into almost the smallest component parts that would both sound natural, but also be the most efficient way to read all of those different variations. So again, back to that McDonald's example, you might read the 5 menu items, and almost at the full stop, the period, you'd stop, and then you'd read the 3 different times of day, morning, afternoon, evening, the lines that were associated with them, and then you'd read. In some cases, we did sessions that would last a long time with voice actors reading 1,000 different locations, and then the AMA tool would permute all of those. So that was the kind of the computer doing the heavy lifting at that point, but you'd still use a human voice actor.
Yeah.
Over time, obviously, synthesized voices using AI. I mean, that's another kind of output of AI is voices, and now video and animations and images and so on, as well as just text. Synthesized voices are now pretty undistinguishable. What was funny actually is when I started the business in 2015, people would ask me about, when at that point Alexa was a big thing, Amazon's Echo product. People would say, when is it going to be synthesized voice? And I'd say, well, the voices aren't quite good enough yet, but I reckon in about 18 months they will be. And I ended up saying that for a long time. And then really it was with the advent of, there was a company called 11 Labs who really cracked. It was funny. There were 3 things they did to make their voices sound way more human and natural than the previous synthesized voices. There was always something, the uncanny valley. You'd always be able to hear a synthesized voice and go, something's not quite right, intonation or speed or pacing or inflection. But what 11 Labs did was, the first thing they did was take the script that you gave to the synthesized voice and passed that through an LLM to actually try and understand some of the meaning. And then they put the meaning back into the synthesizer, the voice synthesizer, to actually get some of that meaning into the voice by using inflection and speed and tone and pitch and so on. And then the second thing they did was be able to take a much shorter voice sample and improve the quality from that shorter voice sample. So previous voices would sound a bit tinny, the actual quality of the voice. If you're an audio expert, it would sound like it was 8 kilohertz rather than 64 kilohertz or whatever it is, a CD quality is. And you'd be able to hear that and, again, discern that in the quality. And the third thing they did, which was actually quite freaky at the time and now it sounds obvious, is add little breaths. So when I'm pausing between a sentence, you can hear me take an intake of breath, and that is what natural conversation sounds like. These guys did it like digitally, and it meant that those voices sounded like someone was actually taking a breath to be able to deliver that sentence for you. And those three things, as far as I know, it was 11 labs who kind of cracked that. Now it's very widely available. There's 100 companies that can do synthesized voice. However, in the world that AMA worked in, or I worked in with AMA, AMA is still very much a going concern and doing great guns without me. We actually had clients who would always ask us, what about AI voices? And then we'd give them demos and we'd use it to create an example version. But we'd always revert to using a human voice actor more or less most of the time. I'd say we probably did 5% of a year of
really?
Okay.
Up until when, though?
Up until last year, yeah. I mean, that might have been increased over the last few months. But the issue there is we work with blue chip advertisers, Fortune 500 companies. McDonald's is the example I'm using throughout. They kind of know all the ways they want to talk to their customers, whereas AI can give you unlimited. It can talk to us individually. That's why, as consumers, we love that icon where we say, "Come on, ChatGPT, talk to us," and we can have what feels like a completely unbounded, limitless conversation. Advertising doesn't really want to do that yet. It still wants to give you the right message at the right time. And also the way the advertising industry works through agencies and the way it's been the way it's grown up over a long period of time is there's a lot of reviews and quality assurance that goes on. And there's still a feeling that if we just let the computers make up a script and voice it and get it out to a listener and no one else has heard it, that actually still gives advertisers a little bit of a jittery feeling. They still want to make sure that they've got it quality assured and reviewed.
I think it's the breadth of the audience, right? I think when we're doing stuff in other professions or other types of businesses, quite often it's one-to-one or one to a few. The nature of advertising in itself is one to millions. So, if you make one tiny mistake, it's really extrapolated, I guess.
Yeah, but obviously what we did with the million ads was give the assurance of the 1 to 1 or the 1 to a million feeling, like we've got one big, just do it. That's what we're going to say to everybody.
Yeah.
But then we add the sophistication of being able to make the listener feel like that ad is personalized just for them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that halfway house. It's not a completely free, open world conversation, but it's also not the same for everybody. It's actually a nice bit in the middle that means the advertising is more effective. In fact, it's significantly more effective when you add personalization to it. So over time, I think, I guess we'll get on to talking about kind of advances over time.
Well, I was actually just about to say exactly that. I was going to say, from the perspective of AMA and audio, but also more broadly as well, how do you see this evolving? How do you, you just talked about some massive steps since 2015, since you founded AMA, multiple massive steps, and due to advanced technology, there's bound to be a bunch of things that we've both seen and many people have seen on the horizon that are going to really change audio, but also other realms as well.
Yeah, I think there are companies now. AMA can do completely AI generated ads. Our customers aren't asking for that. They're asking to see it and hear it and see how they feel about it. So over time, that will emerge. That will become a more popular product. There are other companies who are starting at that point. So there's some out there who are providing completely, unique and different ads for everybody. And then the customer can choose whether they want that or not. So different advertisers want different things. And as you very astutely pointed out, the audiences might want different things as well. So imagine a podcast ad. You might want it to sound a lot more free-flowing and casual, a lot more like the host is speaking to you personally.
Yeah.
And that's harder to do in the model that I was explaining before, where there's a limited list that's read out by a voice actor. So actually there's a product in the middle there that could be for podcasts that feels like it's, a free-flowing conversation. And then I think there'll always still be, what we used to term kind of the radio spot, if you like, that as you say is the kind of the anchor. And actually the way advertising works is you want all of those things. You want to be on every channel doing everything for the channel. So if you're in a TikTok environment, you want to be vertical video with short form. If you're in a YouTube 16:9 your letterbox environment with the skip button, you want to make sure that your message is in the first 3 seconds, etc. So all these formats are different. If you're on a mid roll in a podcast, you want to make sure that your voice isn't different from the if you're in a business news podcast, you don't suddenly want to come in with rock music or something. You know, so you want to make sure that all of these formats you're as engaging as possible and as effective as possible. And again, that's what AMA within all of the audio formats was able to do. So we'd have a radio spot version and we'd have a podcast which might be slightly slower voice read and lower music level, and potentially at some point a completely automated AI version.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me like there's two sides to this. There's the what's the art of the possible? What can you actually do? Yeah, and that kind of outruns market. I was going to say sentiment, wrong word. Market kind of readiness, I think probably is the way to describe it. That's
exactly the right word. Yeah, or product market fit. It's like, this is exciting. And again, we spent a lot of time talking to our clients about the exciting stuff, and then they'd go and actually buy the product that we've been selling for the last few years with some AI components in it, of course. And then, go on.
I was going to say, but the interest is interesting. You kind of term it as product market fit, because I would see that slightly differently in that. There's an identification of a need, right? And I think that the technologies that we're seeing and the evolutions we're seeing in AI are still serving a genuine need. It's not that it's not a product market fit, it's that it's a market readiness to accept that product market fit. It's an inevitability that it will get there, right? It's not that you're saying, look, people don't really have a need for X widget, right? Like there just isn't a need for it, so we can't sell it. This is something that people will need. It's just you got to keep pace with the market readiness and how quickly they're getting to that point.
Yeah, and I think that to a certain extent, AI falls into the technology looking for a solution problem, and actually it can probably solve a lot of problems. But then if I'm sitting there going, I have a very specific problem, what I don't want is someone coming along going, it's the everything product, because that actually doesn't really help. And that's where a company like AMA is very useful, because we take that everything product, customize it really specifically for the very specific use case of digital audio advertising and personalization of digital audio advertising, and then provide that to the customer so that they're not having to go, what do I type in again? And again, I think that's what we'll see over the next few years of kind of development of AI. Of people taking these base layer models, taking the core everything to everybody offering, and then providing really good personalization, customization of the product on top to provide specific use cases that would otherwise be possible without that layer of customization, but actually become quite hard to do and also quite hard to sell. Imagine, all our customers are B2B, right? Selling into marketing teams within either advertising agencies or individual clients. And they're not sitting there going, what's the latest model from ChatGPT? 003, let's go and try that. They're just going, I spent X on this last year. I want to spend X minus 10 on it this year. Help me do that, please. And so a service provider coming in with a specific product for that need, I think a lot of those will emerge if they're not already. Or the existing ones will become AI-powered, as we're seeing.
Yeah, it's interesting. You wonder whether there's a whole new slice. I mean, a lot of professional services are going to disappear as a result of AI, as we probably know. But I wonder whether there's a whole slice of new professional services around customized GPTs, because that capability exists within all of the GPT platforms and backing onto all the LLMs, that the opportunity to create custom GPTs. But I think most people have no idea about it and would never dare to even try and do that. But I suspect there's quite a big opportunity for, in the way you're describing it, to basically be really, really specific on use cases and build that front end through this.
Sure. And I think there's an addition to that, a build to that, which is then what data do I have that could extend the LLM. So the LLM provides this kind of foundational big large language model, but then I've got some data that's absolutely unique and proprietary to me. An obvious example coming to mind is like a healthcare company. They might want to put their customers' data laid on top in a secure environment, maybe sandboxed away so it doesn't get imported back into the main model. And they take the LLM to maybe provide some of the the back and forth with the customer, but then also provide the proprietary data on top to create a really powerful product that is distinguishable. Because the downside, of course, of everyone having the same foundation is that then as a service provider on top of the large language model, everyone's got the same model, more or less. And actually, as we've seen, the differences between Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini, aren't significant enough for a procurement department to be able to go, we can only buy Claude, and next week it'll be the same as ChatGPT, or they're all kind of keeping neck and neck.
Yeah, and I think this is where we get into some of the other kind of ways of thinking about AI. We've talked a lot about it from the point of view of like products, but if you also think about it just in terms of productivity, that's quite different. So it's funny, right? You're describing that product-focused way of thinking about it as, in reality, like in a competitive environment, you're kind of all accessing mostly the same information. So you have to do quite a lot of legwork to actually make yourself better than the others, and everyone's going to be using it. So how do you stand out? And we're back to the world we've always lived in, where competition has to be, falling to the people who are thinking about this in the cleverest way and doing the interesting stuff, which is fine. However, there's also this element of like being more productive at the stuff we do as a business. And that bit is almost like, it doesn't matter that everyone has access to the same stuff. It just matters that everyone in your company is using it to its fullest ability, right? So maybe you can talk to the productivity side of AI for a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And so if we park how we used AI in the tool that we were selling to our customers, and now actually how as the CEO of a business, I tried to get the greatest juice for the squeeze, as it were. And over time, that was it to some extent was provided to us by our tool providers. So we use Gmail as our productivity tool for email and for calendar and so on. And then a new button pops up, and suddenly it's help. We can help you write that email. Which we did training courses on, and how is this useful, and how can this help me more efficiently? Another a tool that we use is HubSpot, and I was a HubSpot customer from AMA day one, and very integrated into our business. And as that product grew, we started to use more and more of the features. And now, just as we were saying, up pops a little agent that can help us, and it has all of our data in it. So it has the nice chat features and functionality. It can write a marketing email for me, and then it can use the data within HubSpot to then populate that and send it out, make it feel personalized and customized, and all the things that you'd want a CRM powered by AI to do. So again, I tried with the company to be as front foot on that as possible. And as we saw AI tools appear in our existing tool set, take advantage of those. And I think the way I'd characterize overall would be, if you imagine a workflow, go and lead generation, go and find a customer that might be useful that we've never spoken to before. Find their number, find their email address, send them an email, get in touch, hope that they reply. When they do reply, send them a deck, go and have a meeting with them or do an online meeting with them, start to customize our product for the solution that they're looking for. They actually sign. Great, they sign. Now it becomes a sold deal. Now we go and work that deal. We book the voiceover. Then we get it powered up into our system. We plug it into Spotify's serving infrastructure. Then the campaign goes live. It serves the campaign for the next month. Then we do analytics and data, and then we finish and get paid. So that, for us, was 3 to 6 months, if we're lucky, 3 to 6 month product, particularly on the payment side. We're lucky if it was 3 to 6 months. And what we were finding, my observation by using AI, was in a lot of those kind of intersections between some of those blocks of the workflow, AI would be really helpful. So, for example, write a sales deck with this customization. So here's our basic template sales deck. Here are the key points that we want to get across about our product. But now we know that we're pitching to this client, and we know that their needs are this, this, and this, and their core components of their advertising campaign for 2025 is this, this, and this. Combine those two. It would have taken me half a day in PowerPoint or in Google Slides messing about manually. Actually, give me 3 minutes and it's done that for me, and then I just go and edit and correct. So the kind of the gaps between those blocks in the workflow, actually now AI is kind of seeping in, almost like you can imagine the plaster between or the cement between the bricks in the workflow, and kind of connecting the dots together. And take our existing customer list and go and find 10 more lookalike customers. Those kind of functionality that otherwise would be quite labored, would be quite manual. You can now use the tools and the AI components of the tools to start to fill in those gaps a lot more effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that it's AI on just a personal front is is more for the curious mind. Like it's really valuable for the curious mind. So you just mentioned about, go and find 10 more customers, whatever. Like you have to be in a place where you're thinking about this stuff deeply and going, oh, go find, this is where I want to look, or, oh, that's interesting. Let's go this way. And I do think, and this maybe comes back to a wider piece about AI, there's a lot of training that needs to go on about being more curious and more effective at thinking through stuff to be able to leverage AI effectively. And I do think that that's not something that we teach people as they kind of grow into their careers. We teach people the other way around, which we teach people in the old days to kind of do a small task, then do a few more tasks, then do a few more tasks, then tell other people to do some tasks, and so on and so forth. We don't have the ability to do that now with AI, because the people who are really the AI can do all of those small tasks, but it needs to be guided. So we need to teach people to guide really quickly.
Yeah, sure. And I think, there's almost two steps, isn't there? There's taking the old dogs and teaching them new tricks.
Yep.
And just to use your example of, or the lead gen example, no one likes lead gen. Honestly, every salesperson I've ever met, and I've employed hundreds of them, different characteristics and different pros and cons and likes and loves and skills and experience, to a person, hates lead gen. Yeah. So if now actually the AI can make that a pleasurable task, suddenly actually that shifts someone's skills and shifts someone's capability. So the smart salespeople that I knew were seeing that as an opportunity. Actually, this is how I differentiate, because the set of people in my world, in my competitive set, hate this stuff. But actually, if I use this tool, I then become that's my superpower. So that would be the old dog, new trick thing. Then there's new dog, and I only know new tricks. And that is, how do I just teach you the new tricks? You don't need to know in the past that lead gen was hard, because you're just facing it now as lead gen being this cool thing that this system does for you. And you just need to know how to tune that system and put in the right, put the right stuff in the top so you get the best stuff out the bottom.
Yeah.
And who's doing that training? In my place, it was me and other people who had, as you say, the curious minds. But I think there's, a particular skill, a particular role type will emerge, if it hasn't already, that is the kind of AI guru. That can help both the old and the new dogs, to use that rather.
It's interesting. It's interesting because we often get asked about chief AI officers, and I have a pretty firm view that I actually think it's the wrong role. I think that AI should be embedded in functional leaders across an organization. But what you're describing there is slightly different. It's not I'm the strategic AI person. Because at the end of the day, right, if you're the chief AI officer, you shouldn't be wading in on what is the best AI tools to use for your legal team. No. The chief legal counsel should. But what is a gap, and you just pointed out very well, is training the whole of the organization how to work effectively with tools. But that's quite different. That's quite a different role.
It is, and you could argue that role should have been there anyway. That there should always be a training development component to everyone's career as much as possible. And if you're a big enough organization, you could have a team that does that for you. And so it's then that job's team. You could argue pre-AI, the HubSpot AI agent, we were teaching people how to use HubSpot without that. So now we just need to change the materials and change the training course and so on, and make sure that they're being as effective as possible. Yeah. So you could argue that actually it's just a migration of a role rather than a completely new.
Yeah. I think you could be true, but interestingly, like you need to train the trainers, right? The people who were doing learning and development need to change the way in which they do the learning and development.
Yeah, and then the AI strategist person, the kind of senior AI role, should be the person talking to the trainers, going, here's the emphasis we want to place within the business. Here's the opportunity we've got. Now you go and deploy that around. Yeah.
I do want to just come back on that point about the lead gen thing, because something that's been mentioned to me in the past by a couple of very smart people, in particular a venture capital guy I know, around lead gen is it's really interesting because you're accessing much faster and greater volumes of lead gen by using these tools. But of course, there's another side to that, which is the recipients come under the weight of a lot more volume and a lot more outbound, right? So or inbound, sorry, I should say. And so it's really interesting because his discussion was around actually what we need is tools for the other side to sift through automatically for you what's good, what's bad, and what's relevant and what's not. Well, have you had any sort of perspectives on that or seen any of that?
No, except, again, just to use HubSpot because that's the one I know very well, is they're on both sides of that conversation. So if we got an inbound through our website that was, hey, can you do this deal for us? But then we were doing outbound to other people going, hey, do you want to come and do a deal with us? Actually, HubSpot was managing both sides of that conversation and then optimizing and providing. They would automatically categorize. They would give a kind of I can't remember what they called it, like a prospect score. You know, how likely is this person to be a serious customer? And they do that by doing like analysis of the company that's coming from, what top level domain is the email coming from. If it's, Dave123@hotmail.com, that would probably get a lower rating than head of advertising at publicist.net or whatever.
But I guess that's prospective customers. I guess I'm thinking more about you as the customer of something that comes into you. So, I don't know,
if we needed to buy some
AMA, do you want to use this new platform that does something really clever? I mean, the deluge of that stuff now is huge, and actually it then just causes productivity issues on your side or your procurement side.
Well, and then you probably go and get the same AI model to then scan through all of those and go, which one's worthwhile?
And that's my question, right? So you end up with this kind of like these two like AI components battling it out between each other, and it's kind of interesting because then where does the information come from, which then ascertains which is the good things and which is the bad things based now, and they're both using the same models as you described. It's this bizarre situation.
The base data is the same for both sides of that decision.
It's essentially a bizarre echo chamber.
Very bizarre. And I don't know what the answer is, other than you still need a human in there to have a bit of gut feel. That's the one thing I'd say. Not the one thing. There's plenty of things that AI hasn't quite nailed yet, and gut feel is one of them, right? And as a manager of people, and as the lead salesperson in the organization, as the CEO, I was the kind of, I guess, the lead, what do you call it, the kind of executive editor. So all of the quality of the actual audio that went out was ultimately my responsibility. So I had all of those kind of hats on. And I don't think many of those could be delegated to an AI only, right? Certainly there are some of my like day-to-day being a business person, sending my emails. Sure, some of those could be delegated to AI, but actually the senior decision-making roles still feel, and maybe I'm just singing my own hymn, but still feel like a human would make the call, even if the call was informed by a lot of AI systems.
So I think it's a senior thing, but I actually think it's a little bit broader, perhaps. And I come back to the word I used earlier. It's curiosity. I don't think that LLMs have captured yet human curiosity, and I think human curiosity is what distinguishes, and I work with executives all day long, right? I think it's often what distinguishes a good from a great executive is their natural curiosity, and that goes from being able to learn effectively to being able to solve problems effectively and all these things, right? And I don't think that LLMs yet have captured curiosity. What they've done is they've built in this kind of version of curiosity which says, you've asked me this, I've given you the answer. Would you like me to think about this, this, and this? Which is more of a kind of an incremental step forward to the next thought, rather than a much broader way of thinking.
Leap of curiosity. Yeah, you could argue it could feel to the end user like curiosity, because if I've got an idea and I've got 3 possible solutions and an LLM comes back with a 4th, then that wasn't in my brain. So that could feel like the LLM has created something new.
Yes.
But actually, in the back end, in the data, in the model, there are actually 10 things. And the only 3 were the ones that are in my head. So that it could feel like it's coming up with even more. But still, it does, because it's the source data, is what it's generating its next word
exactly.
from.
And I think, and not to get too deep on this psychologically, but I think it misses a fundamental of the way the human brain works, which is it's not always linear. Like sometimes we just recollect things from strange places that we latch onto. And that is kind of part of curiosity and how we solve complex challenges, or particularly emotional challenges and things like that, because it's not a straight linear kind of reasoning. It's actually, something that pops up somewhere in your brain that has a greater weighting in your neurons that just fires off randomly and you capture it and it's interesting. So I think we've got a little way to go on that. But let's see. But I think that's a distinguishing factor. But look, just to kind of wrap up on this, what are your kind of broader thoughts about the future for AI in terms of, are you excited? Are you concerned? What are the tools that you think are going to really change our world? Anything that comes to mind around that sort of piece?
Where to start with that? I think I guess I'm generally a tech optimist, so I would be positive on AI continuing to develop, continuing to be useful, and continuing to be benign.
Yes,
there's lots of theories and thoughts, and we've all watched Terminator and The Matrix, where AI is not benign, and in some time in the future, the computers have so much intelligence that we just look like we don't know what we're doing, and so we get kind of rolled over. A blog I read, gosh, it must be, I can't remember, 2019, 2020 about AI is written by, it's called Wait But Why, written by a guy called Tim somebody or other who's done a TED talk on the topic. He had this wonderful kind of like stickman sketch and imagine intelligence as steps on a staircase.
Yeah.
And we're on, let's say, step 7, and a monkey might be on step 6, and an ant might be on step 1.
Yeah.
And currently, you might imagine that like GPT-03 feels like it's on maybe step 5, maybe step 6, getting close to step 7. I read an article yesterday morning saying, is AGI here? And AGI would be when the artificial intelligence feels like it's general enough to be a kind of human brain equivalent. What's the scary bit, but could be good, scary, exciting, innovation, creativity, or bad, scary, computers take over the world, okay, is that staircase is unlimited, right? So we're on step 7, and one of the theory goes, and this blog post kind of posits this theory, that as soon as you get to AGI, it's then only today it's only a matter of really processing power, but there's some tweaks to models and stuff. It's only processing power that stops the AGI self-reinforcing, creating agents that talk to agents that talk to agents that then teach itself, code. No one needs to write code anymore, so let's go. And then suddenly the AI is on step 1,000 and it's not stopping.
Yeah.
The only thing that's stopping it is electricity, power, and processors. And then what happens? Imagine us, we're on step 7 today, looking down at an ant on step 1, and it's only 6 steps away. The computer at step 1,000 looking down at us. We're staying on step 7, pal. We ain't going anywhere. Humans are on step 7. What does that feel like? And what happens if the computers get it into their heads that they must, there's the paperclip example, isn't there? That they must make more paperclips, and so they destroy the world by, et cetera. You can find that example pretty easily.
Yes.
So the other thing that this guy did in this blog, sorry to just completely plagiarize his work, which is excellent and worth being Wait But Why, is he does a 2x2 of all of the AI commentators out there, and on the x-axis is feeling about what the future of AI will look like. Will it be benign, or will it be aggressive towards humans? And then the y-axis, maybe it's the other way around, but the y-axis is then how long is it going to take before we get there? Today through to 100 years' time. And he plots all of the commentators. What's Bill Gates' point of view? What's Elon Musk's point of view? What's Ray Dalio's point of view? And they're plotted on this chart. And if you squint and look back, as with all these 2x2s, how do you get use out of it? It was pretty much always benign in about 15 years. and so this blog is now probably 5 or 6 years old. I'd love him to go back and redo it, because I imagine actually the slide up the x-axis will have gone a little bit more, well, maybe it's not going to be, and then the time will have come right down.
Yes. Well, I think that's the thing that's caught us all off guard, is the speed of change. I don't think anybody would have seen back in whenever it was 2019 when Google did that Transformer paper. I don't think anybody would have seen where we would be now in 2024. No, sure. I mean, the rate of change has been phenomenal. And I think that's the one thing that actually scares people or confuses people or makes people feel unclear about this. It's not actually that we don't relish the fact that we'll see technological change. It's that we've never seen this pace of change in anything ever before. And
it's increased. The pace of change makes it increasingly harder to predict.
Yes.
Because I guess with in the kind of Silicon Revolution, Moore's law.
I was just about to say.
Well, we kind of know that next year we're just going to have faster and better. Do you remember when we, as a kid, I got like an Intel 286, but next year there'll be a 386, and then a 486 XD, and then there'll be da-da-da-da-da. And chips just got faster and faster, and, Moore's law. Yeah. That was kind of predictable. It was a law, and it's still there today. I guess there's some physical limit to how many, microns a transistor needs to be, or atoms of silicon that a transistor needs to be. But that's been pretty reliable. I think here, we don't know what that law is yet. We don't know what the kind of power curve of AI development is. So it's really hard to see where's it going to go. Where's it going to do? What's it going to look like?
Except if the power curve is basically limited by Moore's law in itself. Because
the ultimate, or amount of electricity in the world, right?
Or cooling, for that matter. Well, look, this has been awesome, Steve. Like I knew we'd have a great chat. I knew you'd have some really interesting perspectives, and you'd definitely did not disappoint. So, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone listening has enjoyed it as well. And so I just, want to leave it with that thought, I suppose, that let's not hope that we're going to be in the situation you painted about.
Benign. Let's go benign. Yeah,
let's go benign. I'm going to go with that. It's going to make me feel better, and I like AI, so I'm going to believe it.
Me too. See you on ChatGPT later.
Exactly. Well, it's been a pleasure, Steve. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Rupert. See you soon.
See ya.